Hi.
Hi.
We're
YBX
Creative.
And we want to just take a moment to welcome you to podcast number 2 of season number 3 in 2022.
Wow.
We're so glad you're here with us today.
Numerology.
The whole band is here, though. The band is here.
You might be
Look
a
at us.
preacher
Where's the
if you have
guitar?
alliteration. Like Nick has totally got the alliteration thing going on. Hey guys, welcome to
I'm not a preacher.
Yellow Box
That's the
Creative,
thing,
where
though.
you're going to be challenged to better your life and shut the Hyundai Roboetta.
Yeah. I like it.
Well,
Heck
hey,
yeah.
Well, hey, let's real quick just go around and do mini introductions. Uh-oh, here comes the worship leader. Always got to pull out the guitar.
Welcome to Yellow
We
Box
might as
Creative.
well. We're starting off strong.
Honestly.
Ooh.
Okay. Is it a
That-
Yellow Box meeting if the guitar doesn't come out?
That
though?
probably needs to be our new intro, Tristan, by the way. Like that little guitar. Chris, grab
I
that.
love
baby. Well, I'm Nick, and everybody else kind of introduce yourselves. Who else is on this podcast right now?
I'm MJ.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Tristan.
We're
Heck
Yellow
yeah.
Box Creative. There you go. There's
Yeah.
It's just 5 of us.
We're just a few of us. There's a lot more of Yellow Box all over the world, actually. And if you're listening, we're so glad you were with us. Today, we're going to be focusing in a little bit on a topic we actually tried to get to in week 1, but we ended up just talking about COVID, which was like, what has COVID taught us? Kind of a big topic. And so this week, we actually want to talk about a campaign that we are I've just recently launched called Created for More. And so I'm going to just toss it over to Kevin. Kevin, would you just maybe start us off by telling us a little bit about what is Created for More? Why are we doing Created for More?
Yeah.
Who are
absolutely.
we?
Well,
What are we
it's
doing?
all about wearing sweatshirts with the word Creative for More on it, which you
Yeah.
can buy on our store.
We're sweatshirt people.
With sweatshirt people, go to
Ooh,
yellowbox.com.
shameless
Flight
plug.
flex.
Shameless plug. Shameless. So we actually developed the idea of Creative for More early on in the development of Yellow Box as an organization. And for us, it really boils down to being created for more means that we're fighting for health, identity, boundaries, and margin for creativity to flourish in the local church. And that's something that, we do through a myriad of ways. Obviously, we do direct services creatively for churches, but we also are passionate about developing resources to help creatives and leadership in the local church thrive, as well as, coaching and doing workshops with churches creatively to discuss where is it falling apart? Where's the this train falling off the rails at? And everybody always blames the other side. Oh, it's the leadership, it's the creatives. And we're like, it usually takes 2 to tango and make things go wrong. So like, where's the real process falling apart here, and how can we help? And it's never the same. There's obviously universal rules about how this works, how creativity can thrive. But the other side of that is that, every church is different. No 2 churches are alike. No 2 organizations are alike.
Yep.
And so although there are universal things
Yeah.
that can help, make that work, there are ways that you have to adapt it to apply it. And so, we do have resources available on our website, but it's your job as a creative or your job as a leader to figure out how that applies to your organization, how that works for you, and how you can make that, a process that you guys follow as an organization.
So good. Yeah, I'm kind of like an analogy guy. So I'm going to throw out an analogy that kind of maybe might help describe what Created for More means to me. It's really like the difference between like a plant that's existing with its roots and its branches and leaves, and then you have a plant that blooms. And so our heart
That's
is
good.
that we want creatives not just to exist, but we want them to bloom. We want them to flourish. And there's so much creativity, like great creativity in the church. But for us, I count it a win when you can have great creative, like at your church, at your organization, and great creatives. So creatives that are healthy, and then creative that is healthy, which is the process. That's the win. And so Created for More is this idea that we're beyond the finished product. It's not just the finished product that we're aiming at. It's actually the people in the process along the journey that we're also developing. So when we say developing creativity in the local church as an organization, that's what we mean. The movie that really resonated with me on this was Ugly Dolls. Have you guys seen that movie?
I thought you were going to say
No.
robots.
My movie references from 2009 are all kids movies, by the way. FYI. But
So
like
tell us about this
Ugly
movie, 'cause
Dolls
I'm not-
is no, dude. Ugly Dolls is amazing. Like it's about this idea that any doll that has a defect is discarded and like not like usable, and so you have to be perfect in order to make it to like the shelf. And so all of the ugly dolls end up finding community in this fact that like we don't have any value. But then what's funny is their defects actually end up being what makes them unique and special. And all the
That's
perfect
cool.
dolls that end up in getting played with and make it to the shelf are envious of these ones that have a defect. Like when Beanie Babies went viral again, because it was like anytime there's a misprint on the label, then it was like, oh my goodness, like if I could find that doll, it's worth $8,000 or something. Anyways.
I love that. So if you're looking for a new movie for your At the Movies series, check
Ugly
out Ugly Dolls.
So I was going to say, I love the idea that that creatives are, I think there's a lot of things about our experience. It doesn't have to be creative. You could be a leader as well. You could lead creatives. You could just be someone in existence, not a creative or a leader. There's things about you that are unique that you might see as a weakness, and it might help you though. Like what we like to talk. This is especially a trait that deals with creatives. Is creatives, people who are in the creative industry or who are you're a copywriter, you're a storyteller, you're a filmmaker, you're a designer, you're an editor. You're a social media specialist, you're an analyst for that kind of data, you're a marketer, whatever these fields may be, you identify as a creative. It's likely that you've realized by now that you do see the world a different way. You do see things and circumstances a different way. You're always like dissecting, movies, you're dissecting songs, you're dissecting quotes, when you read a book, stuff sticks out to you like, man, how could this apply in this way? And you start dreaming up ways to use it. It's not because you got dropped on your head. Yeah. It's because you're made that way on purpose. And so that goes into this idea of Creative for More. We believe that creatives see the world a different way. And that's not an accident. It's not a mistake. You're not broken. This is how you can, if you learn to realize, this is a gift. I can use this to help go through, and develop creativity. Like when I was growing up, I had a pretty big bout with depression. Not because I needed necessarily medication or anything like that, or needed therapy, but there was a piece of that depression that was, I hadn't figured out yet that I felt things very deeply. When stuff impacted me, I felt it extremely deeply. I was an empath. I didn't realize it. I was just like, everything touches me like, I'm getting emotional. I get angry. I kind of jumped to this thing and, understanding what that is, understanding who you are, understanding that the things that you see as a weakness actually could be a strength. Like when you can turn that dial and go, you know what, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this to develop creativity. You turn what you saw as a curse into a gift. And so creativity in the local church for us starts with identifying what is a stigma. A lot of times creatives, especially creatives in the local church, have kind of been stigmatized because it's during COVID, like we talked about, in the last episode, there was this kind of elevation given to creatives because it was like the only thing, what do? We got to figure this out. We got to create an online platform. We got to create our episodes. So creatives really had a place of prominence, almost like we talked about it on that episode, like almost like in the days of like rebuilding the wall or the temple in the Old Testament, where there was a call to go out and find creatives who would help rebuild this thing. Mm-hmm. And so that was almost what happened in COVID, very much on that kind of level. And so, and we can struggle and go back into the mindset of, it's just business as usual now. We're going to give that prominence, or we're going to give that importance, or we're going to give that budget, whatever it is, to outside of this creative world. And so creatives kind of feel like a stigma. It can be you can easily feel like, man, I'm just shouting at a wall. And so to identify that stigma and turn that into a healthy process is one of our big passions at Yellow Box.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that talking about that's like the reason why we exist, and like the one of the ways that we try to pull that out is developing these services and these creative processes and everything to come in and like jump in with your team. I think we oftentimes use that phrase, like, we want to come alongside you and everything, and that, I don't think there's a better way to say it. Like, we do want to just come in and help develop that in your team and find those, like you said, curses that are gifts and everything, and help people learn how to develop them. And I think that's like been the big thing that I've learned with my time at Yellow Box and everything, is that's the heart, not only for Yellow Box, but I think that's like kind of the heart of the church. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast, I think we maybe have all had those moments along the way of our life where, like, my daughter, I just noticed that she's like 10 and she's still watching like Peppa Pig and even like Coco Melon and like Bluey. And so it's like almost past, like she's past the age where she should be enchanted with those kind of shows. And I asked her, like, why are you watching this stuff still? I realized that she's fascinated with not the actual show or the storyline, but actually how it's being made. And that she actually wants to create kids' stories and wants to tell those stories. But it wasn't until I noticed that in her that was a need, that then I started messaging Kevin a few months ago for Christmas. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to get her a set of like a little setup for her to start doing some studio stuff, and really tried to breathe into her creativity. But you know, the Bible says that Jesus was moving through and he stopped and saw the crowds and was moved with compassion. And so when we say created for more, like, we have to take that time and build that margin in to stop and think through, what is it that's moving us with compassion? What are we seeing that's right in front of us right now that is moving us? So when Kevin's talking about him being young and saying, and these things moved me deeply, well, it's out of him being moved with compassion, just like Jesus was, that he got launched into his creative gift. And what we want to do is create an environment where people can stop long enough and have enough margin to stop and really evaluate, both for themselves individually and for our teams, to say, man, where can I help breathe onto the creative gift, breathe life into it, and create an environment where people can grow and develop the gift of God within them.
That's
Yeah.
good.
And it's not for nothing else. You know, obviously one of the things that Yellow Box does is we want to equip the local church, and that includes not just the creatives, but the lead teams and the pastors, to help them understand the importance of investing in the creative team. But even if we're not hitting all of those marks, even if, you know, what we're talking about doesn't hit the pastors, what we really want to do is be able to validate all of the creatives that are following us or following along in the journey, and encourage them. I think, Taylor, we just posted something, you know, directing at the creatives who are following us, like, hey, we see you, we value you, we see all those, you know, that hard work, all the hours behind the scenes, because often the creatives in the local church end up feeling like the black sheep, end up feeling isolated and outcasted. Because you have all the other, think about the lead team at a church, and you've got the kids pastor and the youth pastor and, you know, all these different areas or departments, and they're constantly being invested into. The why is easily seen and understood by pastors, by the board, by the overseers. Like, oh, of course, that's for the next gen. That's, you know, of course we're going to invest in this curriculum. Of course we're going to invest in all of these activities. They don't understand as easily the why of, like, why should we invest in the creative team? Why should we put, you know, X, Y, and Z, or this amount of, you know, investment into making, you know, whatever it is that the creative brings to the table. And so actually it's interesting, 2 days ago, someone that I, you know, haven't talked to in a long time reached out to me and was asking me, like, hey, what do you think I should do? I want to get a cool creative job at a church. Like, what do you think the pastors look for, you know, or whatever? And the first thing, I immediately called her. I called this person because it's not an easy answer, and it's not a quick, let me type this up. but I didn't
Yeah.
ask her like about what she knows how to do or, you know, any of those things. I asked her why. Like, why do you want this, or why are you looking for that job? Because I don't think you are understanding even like all the things that come with that, and all of the, like, what you're going to have to advocate for, what you're going to have to speak up for. And I feel like if you aren't in a position to understand like why you are doing what you're doing, or what you're created for, or why you want to create this, then you're not going to have a good enough, you're not going to be able to advocate or speak for yourself and convince your pastor. You're having to convince people to invest into you. You know, kids pastors don't have to convince anyone like for their job or what they're doing, but as the creative, you do have to speak up for yourself. And so I think it's very important for the creative to understand the why, to understand the purpose. I think we broke down, when we were thinking of that campaign, Created for More, we broke it down into 3 words. It was created for more. And the created came with, you know, speaking to the creator, you know, the ultimate creator created us as creatives. The 4 spoke to that purpose. And so I was telling her all about like, what do you feel your purpose is? Do you feel specifically called to do, you know, X, Y, and Z? Because if you don't, then what is fueling that purpose? You need something to fuel it. And then the more is obviously, you know, the capabilities and thinking more outside the box, and, you know, helping us to actually achieve the dreams, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the key part is why. What is the purpose? What is the reason? All of that is going to fuel everything else. And if you think it's just, oh, I want a cool gig, I want a cool creative job, like, run away. That's not for you. You're gonna burn yourself.
Yeah.
Let's dive into a little bit about what does it look like to develop creativity in the local church. So one of the things that we are passionate about, what we exist for, is we exist to develop creativity in the local church. And so we do that obviously through creative services, but we also do that, like we explained earlier, through resource development, through coaching, through some of those things. So I'm going to go through and kind of give my thought on it, but I would love for you guys to popcorn in. What does it look like to develop creativity in the local church? So one way it looks like is for you as someone who's serving in a team, creatively, to lead up, to speak the importance of a healthy creative process to leadership within the church. And so if you're that leader and you're in the other seat, it means to listen. What does it mean to develop creativity in the church? It means to listen. It means to lean into those who you brought to the table, who you identified as having a creative gift. Listen. Is the process that you currently have and understand about creativity not working? Is it not working because, maybe it's not fully thought through? Or is it not working because you only initiated what you understood about creativity? It's not a fault. It's not a bad thing. You don't, you're leading. There's a process about building an organization. It doesn't happen overnight, and there's going to be missteps along the way. That's totally fine. It's no one's fault. It's just how it works. But when a new idea comes along, listen, is this something we can adapt? Is this something we can, adopt? Is this something we can bring into our organization? Go, maybe me saying I heard from God on Saturday night about what tomorrow's graphics should look like isn't the healthiest process. If people have to literally give up time outside of the normal workflow to complete a task, it's not a healthy process. So what do you guys think? What does it look like to develop that in the local church?
Yeah, I think I agree, Kevin, with what you're saying. I think the Saturday nights and the Fridays leading into Sundays can be hard, but I also know that there are moments where it is legit, and I'm bringing balance to the force here a little bit too. And obviously, as a creative, there's always there's going to be those moments that we do have to understand if God is leading our team or the church in a different direction, to lean into that. I think for me, if I were to popcorn in, I think chiming in on being clear with your communication. So clear communication. So the clearer that we are with our language, the better your creative is going to be. And making that connection between how clearly have things been communicated versus what is the creative expectation of what I expect to see or hear at the end of it. And so we're big on language. Language creates culture. And so like a lot of times we will work with teams to say, okay, I want to hear this again with different words. Let's use some different language. Let's come up with a different way to say it. Say it as many different ways as possible so that we can get a great understanding of it, exactly what it is that you're trying to say. So process, yes, but then just over communicating, both in just how you communicate, but then in the what too. Just make it as verbose as possible, brain dump everything that's in your head and make it crystal clear. Because the more that we have, the more creative we can be with it.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think I'm very operational. So I am so like a believer in process, and I want everyone to follow the process. So, speaking on a little bit of both, I think if you're the creative, you have to understand that you are responsible for helping your lead team understand what that process looks like. They're looking to you. They're also, we all hate this, but the whole phrase of, I'll know it when I see it, or I don't know what I don't like about that, but I know I don't like it. Your pastor, he may not be creative, but he might see something and he knows that he likes it and send it to you. You're going to have to just understand that that's okay, and that it's your responsibility to take what they said and run with it. And then maybe that's your process to internally, like, okay, well, he said this, he said these kinds of lines, so let me show him what that could possibly mean. That's where mood boards come into play, and putting pieces together so that in your next meeting with your pastor, you're like, hey, you said these kinds of lines, there's 3 different versions, which one do you like the best? And the more that you do that with your lead team, the more you're going to get to know them, their preferences, and that process is going to be way faster, because you're going to be like, oh, I already know what he means when he says that. You know? It also means, to me, once you have a really great process, that's great. You're going to have great, deliverables. You're going to have a great final result. But speaking into the whole last minute thing that also happens, it's also, I believe, your responsibility to be prepared. You should probably have a few different things on the back burner or in your little storage chest, whatever you want to call it, your digital, treasure box of things that might be able to help you, so that on Saturday night at 10 p.m. when your pastor does have a Holy Spirit moment, you're like, oh, sweet, I have a few things that can help me and knock it out a lot faster. So process is great, but preparation is also great, just in case those Holy Spirit moments happen. Just be ready.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I just going to say, Kevin, maybe you can chime in on this too, because this is something that we've helped a few churches with, is developing what we call like a season from a design perspective, and really applying that so that we don't have to develop a new design concept last minute. A lot of churches operate in seasons, and there's a whole podcast, I think it's in season 1 or 2, about seasons, and we can reference that. But those are some things that we can do just from a creative perspective to kind of prepare for those kind of moments. Because I'm a plan guy, but I'm also a spontaneous guy. I'm both. Like as a worship leader, even I know like we use tracks, but we also flow. And so I think creatives need to be able to do both, and need to be create an environment where they're able to be flexible, but also have those processes and plans in place.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to, and we actually have a post that talks about, the Holy Spirit can be just as much in the planning as he is in the moment. And we talk about that a lot because we believe that like time is only a thing that we deal with on our plane of existence. Like it's not in existence in heaven. It doesn't exist there. Because Jesus made a promise. Think about this. Jesus made a promise to the thief on the cross that today you'll be with me in paradise. Well, we know he wasn't in paradise in our timeline, right? Because he didn't rise again for 3 days. So there's this thing that happened. It shows that time and time again, time doesn't exist in the heavenly realm. So for us, it's like, okay, we can plan. We can do everything we need to do to plan. And I think you should. I think you should have every measure of planning possible. Consult with God. Okay, what is our theme? If you're a leader, be asking God those questions. What are we supposed to talk about this year? Then bring that information to your team. How does this fit into what we know happens in our schedule as a church? We know this season is very heavily internal because people go on, out of town, they go on vacation. We know this is a really good season for people who aren't familiar with our church to come and visit. And you can plan out your seasons of, how you organize your series, how you organize your talks, whatever you want to call them, how you organize your topics that you're covering at the church. When is a good time to invest in marketing? When is a good time to go more internal with that conversation? You can really go and decide that as a team and then make all those plans. And so, some things that are obvious that fill in the gaps there are major holidays, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Easter, Christmas. Like these things come every year. It shouldn't be a surprise. So if you constantly find that you're like trying to get to the finish line of Easter 3 weeks away from Easter, that's an organizational problem. That's not a God inspiring you last minute kind of problem. That's an organizational problem. And I feel confident saying that because we can ask the Holy Spirit to be in our planning. But there are those circumstances where last minute things do happen. There might be a tragedy that occurs in your community or in the nation or on the global scale. There might be something that very importantly comes up that you need to address as a church. And so what you can do is prepare with, like MJ was saying, your little, creative emergency kit. Let's call it, whatever you want to call it. You have this thing ready.
I like treasure box better.
Treasure box sounds way better. I gotta get my suture kit out and no, I'm just kidding. Treasure box sounds way more fun. But whatever it is that you want to call it, you have this resource ready. And so that can be done through creative planning for seasons. I know I have this design that's already pre-approved by the team and the pastor and leadership. And all I got to do is slap in the title. All I got to do is maybe change the background image out. All I got to do is go in and change this thing or that to make it ready, because you can plan that. You can plan for those emergencies so that you don't have to kill yourself on a Saturday night, staying up till 6 a.m. and then going to church the next day and being at church until 5 p.m. Like that's, if you're surviving creativity in the local church through Red Bull injections, it's probably the wrong way to do it. It's not sustainable.
Your wings will give out.
Your wings will. Yeah. Red Bull can give you wings.
Your wings will give out.
For sure.
That's good. I think to hammer that home too, what you said, MJ, about preparedness, and kind of going in with all of what we said. Like, I'm not gonna get his name. We have a really, really great client who I love, who recently did a message. We edit their podcast each week, and he recently told everybody in the sermon, he was like, hey, by the way, I wrote 7 sermons this week, and then this morning got up and wrote another one, because that's what I felt like God was telling me and everything. And it was a banger. It was great. Like, he hit it home, but he was able to do that because of his preparation skills. He already had an outline. He already had a concept, and that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Right.
With, if you have these seasons together, like Kevin said, all you got to do is change out the background and everything. It already fits the concept that you have designed. And so that level of preparation is going to be make or break for you in those Holy Spirit moments, because I think that, like Kevin said, we can include him in our preparation, and that'll help when he spontaneously, speaks as well. And so that preparation aspect is so important.
I think I'm curious. I automatically, I'm looking at Nick to answer this, but anyone answer this. I mean, I feel like a lot of what we've talked about it's great, but it's speaking a lot into the actionable items. There's the things that, hey, creative, you can go and do this. You can go and prepare, expect these kinds of things. But how would you speak to someone who's looking for guidance in the more aspect? Like, that more is really speaking more into their capabilities, into, the reasoning, the why. How would you tell that creative to identify what is my more?
Yeah, it's a good question. The thing about what we do, creatives in the local church, it's about a well-roundedness and understanding whether it's, hey, we need to talk more about process or planning. That could be your more. Your more could be, hey, we need to have more conversations about our communication. We need to get some of our language. Maybe we need to develop a language handbook or a culture handbook within our church. Maybe that's kind of your next step. But I think probably the biggest thing I would ask myself is, how am I connecting the artistry of the church to the calling within the church? because creatives are not just artists. There's always a calling attached to your artistry. And what am I doing? I think everybody's more. This is the challenge for everybody is how are we connecting our gifts and our talents to our calling and then operating with the understanding? Because when you or work at a church, it's like working at a restaurant and people experience your meals every Sunday, but you come on staff and you start volunteering, you end up stepping into the kitchen, and the kitchen can be hectic. It can be ugly. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you go into the kitchen, you're like, I'm never going to eat there again. I can't believe what
burned.
I can't. Yeah, it's hot in the kitchen, right? It's too hot in the kitchen. So like, there's all of the analogies. That's probably a whole other podcast. But the idea is like, you will say yes to this if you understand your calling. If your identity is solid in who you are and what your calling is as a creative, as opposed to what the gift is or what it is you're producing, you will last. And that is our heart for you as Yellowbox, is that you last in ministry, that you press forward, that you continue to run your race in a healthy way, in a healthy pace. And we are cheerleading you on. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this podcast and listening. Hit us up in the DMs at Hello Yellowbox on Instagram. Do we do Facebook anymore? Are we on TikTok? Taylor, where are we at?
We do have a Facebook. We do have a TikTok, but there's no TikToks on there. But if y'all wanted to start cultivating creativity in the local TikTok community,
we're going to start doing those TikTok dances.
That can be an internal Zoom.
We're ready.
Well, next week's podcast topic will be TikToks.
I'm going to say there's probably certain people in this group that would be better at the TikTok dancing than others. And we'll just let
Nick.
Yeah, Tristan, Taylor, Nick.
Tristan, we're not looking at you.
It's just going to be me. I'm taking it over. It's going to be a 7-year-long Tristan Yellowbox TikTok takeover.
Well, hey, thanks again for listening to this episode of the Yellowbox podcast. We're so excited that you guys are here, that you're listening, that you're watching. We got watching now. You can watch us now. This is the first for us. You might be less intrigued now that you have to see faces and connect them to a voice, but we're excited that you're here. So for us, we're really excited that this is our second episode back. We had a hiatus, like we talked about. If you listen to our first episode of this season, you can learn more about what happened. And we dove straight into the chaos of COVID. And so we're very excited to be back. And we hope that this, is a blessing to you guys. We hope this is equipping for you guys. We are going to be releasing more and more resources on our website at yellowbox.co. And we'll also link in this podcast links to some of the things we mentioned here about seasons planning and other episodes of previous podcasts. So thank you again for tuning in.